You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatimah. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas. I'm Fatimah, CEO at Agile Management Office, Mental Health Ambassador, and your host. This podcast is made possible thanks to Agile Management Office. We help businesses in three key ways: improving organizational culture and delivery, supporting transformation and change, and streamlining governance and process using 20 years of proven practice and the AMO Way model. In today's episode, I am talking to Mr. Michael Haynes. Michael is an SME, so small to medium enterprise business growth specialist. He is the founder of consulting firm Listen, Innovate, Grow. His focus and passion are empowering CEOs of small and medium-sized service-based companies to acquire larger businesses, B2B clients, and achieve the growth they seek through a combination of strategic marketing, business innovation, and sales. Michael is also the author of the book Listen, Innovate, Grow, a guidebook for startups and SMEs to acquire and grow business-to-business customers. Michael is currently based in Sydney, Australia, and works with companies globally. Now, Michael and I have been talking a lot lately about small and medium enterprises, which moving forward in the conversation is going to be referred to as SMEs and business to business B2B, in case you are not aware. So we're going to cover all things from sales, marketing, and how to align to the customer by listening to them and working together to define innovative strategies to support your business growth. So I hope you enjoy this podcast with Michael. Okay. Welcome, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us on the Agile Ideas podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure. So I've already given people a little bit of your background, but in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Michael Haynes. I'm an SME Business Growth Specialist. My focus and passion is working with CEOs of service-based small and medium-sized businesses to help them acquire and retain business clients. So I'm your SME business-to-business specialist to enable those CEOs to build the companies and get the growth, impact, and success in life that they seek. Because I truly believe B2B is the way to go and the way to be for us small and medium business owners and leaders. So that's really my jam, my reason for being.
Amazing. And just so those that are listening, if they're not clear, when we talk about SME moving forward in the conversation, we're talking about small and medium enterprise and B2B being business to business, just to clarify. We're not talking about subject matter experts, which is, the other sort of lingo that we use with that.
Indeed.
Perfect. So I always like to start to understand just something interesting that happened to you in the last week. Is there something interesting that happened to you in the last week?
Something interesting in the last week. I don't know if I can say.
Or frustrating, something interesting, or something positive.
Oh gosh. Well, frustrating has been the train strikes here in Sydney. That has been a frustration in trying to get around the city, and what should take not very long has taken much longer. And I'm a person that grew up on public transport, from Toronto, Canada. I grew up on public transport, so I'm very comfortable in traveling in long distance. So these strikes that have been going on have been a little bit irritating, understand why they're happening. So that's been a frustration. In terms of positives, there's been some good positive activity with my business and some of the things that I'm looking to do, working on building my community and stuff. But no, other than that, nothing overly interesting, unfortunately, Fatimah. I can say that's been, out of the ordinary, outside of the realms of business and work that keeps us as entrepreneurs and SME leaders busy. But I love what I do, though, so I do feel very blessed in that regard. Mondays, Fridays, they're all the same for me, but wasn't always that way when I was back in the corporate world. It was, Monday, start of the week, Wednesday, it's hump day, and then Friday. And living for weekends and annual leave, whereas now I love what I do and who I'm doing it with. So Mondays and Fridays are, one and the same. So that's a pretty nice place to be. So I feel pretty fortunate in that regard.
Amazing. And I think being an entrepreneur, that's part of what we look forward to, is we stop counting down the days for weekends and things like that. And that means you're really doing what your passion is and what you love. So that's amazing. Now, how long have you been in Australia? When did you move? And sort of tell me about how sort of you ended up here instead of...
Okay, so that is a bit, I guess, some people say it's more of an interesting story. So I finished my MBA way back in 1997. So yes, I'm much older than I look. And so I finished my MBA in 1997. I had a bit of a gap before I was starting my first post-MBA job. Came here to Australia for about 2.5 months, traveled around, made a couple good friends in Melbourne, and one of them who now lives in Coffs Harbour, north of Sydney, for those of you living in Australia. My friend Joshua said, oh, you got to come back, visit. I came back to visit 3 times. 2000, I took the plunge, moved to Australia, arrived here just before the Olympics, which was fantastic, me being a massive athletics fan. And I started working at a .com, got laid off within 9 months, and then did a few more corporate jobs. And so, yeah, I've been here ever since. So my love of travel and just wanted to try something new and be adventurous brought me here July 2000. So it's now 22 plus years that I've been here and loving it. And it's been quite an interesting journey over the 22 years from corporate to independent, and a few changes and evolving as an independent to where we are here now in late 2022.
Amazing. I'm going to get into all of that, and from your corporate to your independent career, but I am interested when people move here, is there anything that really surprised you the most coming to Australia? Like anything in Australia that was like, oh, I didn't know this, or something that caught you off guard that maybe you weren't expecting?
Not really, although those that know me know I love food. I love to eat it. I love to cook. Burgers are one of my things that, during lockdown, I kind of become pretty good at making. Anyways, back in my first trip in 97, I remember I went to Hungry Jack's and ordering a burger, and then they had the Aussie burger with beetroot and egg and the whole lot. That really, I was like, what do you mean you're putting beetroot? Because I'm not a big fan. Sorry, folks. Not a big fan. I was like, what do you mean you've got beetroot and pineapple and you got an egg on your burger? I'm like, the egg I can work with. Yeah, that did kind of like, and the teenager, the young girl at checkout was just laughing like, well, it's an Aussie burger. It's like, well, that was probably one of the things that really kind of struck out with me, that like, oh, okay, that's very different. So minor on some scales, but someone who's a big, foodie, well, quasi foodie, who does love a good burger, that does still stand out for me as one of my first experiences here in Sydney coming to Australia.
Amazing. Sounds good. Don't like those burgers either. So I'm in the same boat. So Michael, you obviously spent a long time in corporate, and then you moved into the sort of small to medium enterprise, which is, not too dissimilar to what I actually done. So I completely understand sort of where you're coming from. I'm interested to know, was there sort of a real, was there anything that really stood out that you took? Obviously, there's probably a lot of things you took from corporate that you were able to transfer to smaller businesses. But was there anything stand out that you thought that was the most important element of what you do that you brought into small businesses that most small businesses who don't come from a corporate background would never have known?
I would say probably what I got a lot out of my corporate experience, Fatimah, is, so, my business is called Listen, Innovate, Grow. Getting really savvy at listening and what listening means in a business context, because it's about knowing those different sources of how to listen, pulling it together and getting the so what. That's what I was in my corporate roles. Senior leaders brought me on board to really help them do that listening, get the so what. And so I saw real value in that. And that's probably one of the core things that I bring to the small and medium businesses that I work with, is how to listen. Because I find, irrespective of the industry, I work with companies globally, irrespective of size. I've worked with everything from multinationals right down to micro businesses. I find that there's often big gaps in listening. Either they don't do any, or they do a little bit, or in the case of corporate, they've done lots of listening using various sources, but they haven't you put that information out across the business, because you need to get those so what's, and then each of your different business units, marketing, sales, operations, HR, customer service and support. There are implications from those insights and feedback of listening that all those business units need to be using that will drive, the performance and the success and the existence of the business. So those listening skills and being able to take the so what from the listening is the big elements that I've learned through my corporate career and taken it into the world of SMEs.
Amazing. And I think it's really hard as a small business or a small to medium business to have enough time to just stop and listen, because we're so frantically running around, or most of us are frantically running around trying to grow a business. At least in the bigger businesses, you probably have a bit more breathing space. We're trying to manage tight budgets as a small business and being very frugal with that. So I think it's definitely something to do. But also, how do you recommend people, once they've done the listening, to then enact some of the change or activity needed to drive the next step? So what happens between listen and innovate?
So between listen and innovate, that's where you need to be gathering your teams together, and you should be doing your workshopping and saying the so what does it mean, and coming out with what I call your action or your battle plan. What are those next steps? What are those key activities we need to be doing? And you really need to be building in that whole listening and then doing the so what, the brainstorming and determining the action. That needs to be a regular cadence of how you do business. So you should be planning, I would say, at least quarterly to have those come together, workshops, meetings. They don't have to be necessarily overly long, but to be understanding what have we learned, where are we at, and then, okay, what does this mean? And what does this mean against the priorities that we have for the business? And Fatimah, I would say in this environment that we're in right now, with all this uncertainty, volatility, inflationary pressures, etc., building in that cadence of having those regular check-ins and revisiting what your action plans are going to be doing, what does that mean for moving forward? It is a necessity now. It's not, you have to make time, you have to schedule in the diary. I would say a minimum quarterly to be making sure you're doing that, what I call review and reset. It's just critical now more than ever, particularly in this uncertain environment, and we're trying to all move forward. And as small and medium businesses, we don't have the luxury of big budgets and all of these resources that our big corporate brothers and sisters have. So if we're going to thrive and survive, we have to have that regular cadence. So you have to build it in as part of your business operations, your day to day.
Amazing. And I think I know that moving from big corporate to small business obviously is a big shift there. What would you say are some of the key challenges in the corporate space when you were working there, and maybe a couple of challenges you see commonly in the small to medium enterprise? Are they different or they're the same?
There are some similarity with big corporate. Big corporate has a lot of the budgets and a lot of the tools. So if we come back to listening, because listening in terms of getting that in-depth understanding of your industries, markets, competitors, your customers, and in B2B, your buyers. In the corporate world, they've got lots of resources and lots of sophisticated tools that they can be using. So they often will spend all their money, and they've got the big market research departments, customer insights departments, and they can do all of that, but then nothing is done with it. And so it's not uncommon to go into a senior exec's office and you see versions 1 to 15 of the market research, versions 1 to 25 of the strategic plans. And, it's been this, massive decks, PowerPoint decks, and nothing has been done with them. And if you look at version 25 and you compare to version 12, and I literally did this at one telco company, you will see that, recommendations and insights are much the same. How many consulting firms, how many market research projects? So that's big corporate. With your small and medium businesses, so busy doing the day-to-day, not enough time to be working on the business. And that's where so many small, medium businesses, they come to me, they say, Michael, we want to grow, but they don't have the time to be doing some of the fundamentals that they need to be doing in order for them to be able to grow. So that's the difference. In terms of big corporate versus small. Big corporate has lots of resources, but often not using them. They're not executing. They're not executing on those insights, on those strategies. Small businesses, they're not spending enough time on the business in terms of being able to grow. And many many small businesses, small medium businesses, they're well positioned. They've got great offerings. They're experts at what they do, but there's not time built into their systems or way of operating to work on the business. And working on the business, having that thinking time, planning time is quite critical.
It's so relevant in terms of a sort of a post I wrote just the other day around, I find that big businesses will spend an inordinate amount of money. I've seen really recently a couple $100,000 on a 200 slide deck talking about strategy that no one can execute. I feel like they'd spend a lot of time doing strategy packs and presentations, and as you said, versions 1 to 100, just to get out of actually executing and doing any of the work. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. The cycles in big corporate can be so long that by the time you're actually done all of that, it starts another cycle. Yes. And to be quite honest, that's part of the reason why I left, because I found it quite nonsensical. And I'm going to say that, no disrespect to any big corporate folks that are listening, but I just found it ludicrous. And I've worked at several organizations, and that was quite common. Yes. And strategy doesn't have to be, you don't have to have elongated this. With my clients, when we do a strategy plan, they don't go beyond 10 pages, if that, at the max, 10 times. That's probably at the maximum. There's no need. And I'm very big on the action plan. That one slide that says, what are the 3 to 5 priority actions, by whom, by when? I'm very big on the action plan, because it's attraction that is going to, where the rubber hits the road. That's where you get momentum. Momentum breeds momentum, and things are going to evolve and change anyhow, but you have to get started and get doing things, and then seeing what works. You've got to be executing. Think, plan, and execute. That's my motto.
And I think another sort of relevant point perhaps is, in small business, we're so small and we've worked together before as well. So we are doing everything together. Whereas in a big business, some team creates the strategy, then hands it over to delivery, and then delivery has to figure out the thinking behind the strategy, which just took 9 months to create. So there's a complete disconnect there.
Yes.
So I'm kind of not surprised by some of the challenges, but, thinking about some of the reasons why, moving from large consulting sort of big business to smaller businesses, was there some other things that really drove you to start your own business? And I mean, that's a challenging feat in itself to do. So what were some of the drivers behind that?
Great question, Fatimah. I think I do come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my sister has her own law practice in Toronto. She practiced straight out of law school, right? She's setting up her own practice. My cousins, they're entrepreneurs as well. One has a home renovation business, one has a construction business. So there are a number, I've got some cousins in the UK that they have their own businesses as well. So I guess there's a bit of entrepreneurship in my blood, so to speak. Also from working from corporate, and I know I've always had an affinity to small, medium businesses, and I just have seen a lot of opportunities where these businesses are so great at what they do, but if they can just get some guidance in terms of knowing, how to get on the path to growth and doing it in a sustainable, profitable way, they can have success. So those are some of my, underlying motivations and drivers as to why I decided to make the jump from corporate and delving into the world of working with small and medium businesses.
Amazing. And you have a lot of energy as well, which is something that's so important for being an entrepreneur. So I think I love the energy you bring to conversations that we have. So that's excellent. So thinking about, I know we're talking about business to business, but also there's the other side, the business to consumer. So I'm kind of interested in understanding what's the key differences for our listeners between business to business, business to consumer, and how can SMEs successfully navigate them? What are some of the implications or challenges?
Okay, so business to consumer. The consumer is decision maker and user. So, you're going to head off on a trip to Europe. You are the decision maker, and you are also going to be the user. You're going to be the one on that that great vacation. In business to business, when you're selling to another business, and I also include selling into government organizations under the B2B umbrella. When you're selling into a business, whether you're an IT firm selling in your cybersecurity, your managed services, solutions, whether you're a catering company and you're selling your catering services into the big banks for all their corporate functions and their workshops, etc. When you are selling into another organization, decision maker and users are not one and the same. Those that make the decision can be very separate from those that are using the decision, from those that are using the product. So decision makers and users are separate. Also, in terms of decision making, there are multiple decision makers involved in the decision making process. And quite often, these people will have different roles and titles, different responsibilities, and different drivers as well. So business to business can represent big opportunities, because if you win that contract as the IT provider to provide their cybersecurity managed solutions to a company, that can be large revenues that can go over time. So you not only are getting a big revenue, but recurring revenue on an ongoing basis at a very large amounts. So business to business has that great opportunity for small, medium businesses. And once you start into one, momentum can breed momentum. Word of mouth is big amongst decision makers, and it can lead to more opportunities either within that business or elsewhere within industry. So business to business represents massive opportunities, but you do need to understand the dynamics of how the decision makers, who they are, what are their priorities, and how they buy. Those are the three strategic questions that you need to understand to be successful in B2B.
Okay, amazing. That's a really good answer. I think that'll help a lot of people listening. I always say that bigger businesses could be doing more to work with smaller organizations. I don't know why they don't do it. I'm constantly talking about it, even in government as well, using that same example. I just don't think they give enough small businesses an opportunity, even though there's people like us out there that are doing, a really good job and actually executing, not just creating strategy packs. So it's always interesting. I want to kind of go back to a comment you made earlier, Michael, around sort of the relationship between different business functions within an organization. What do you think the spillover effects between sort of marketing and sales and other departments? What can businesses do to better align the relationship between them?
Okay, so that's a great question, Fatimah. And one of the keys to success in B2B now in 2022 and moving forward is that we have to recognize that there are more decision makers involved in decisions when you're selling into organizations, particularly larger organizations. It's on average between 6 to 8 people. And these decision makers now are doing a lot of independent research and decision making. This was happening in B2B before the pandemic, but as a result of the pandemic, it has exacerbated even more so. So your target decision makers, be it the CEOs, business managers, whom have you, they are doing lots of research. They're going online and doing online Google searches. They're reading lots of their industry publications. They're part of their industry and professional associations, for which they're going to their conferences, be it in person or virtual. They're going to their webinars. There's more and more business leaders joining communities, mastermind groups. So the likes of the CEO Institute, the Vistages, entrepreneur organizations, just to name a few of these kinds of organizations, going to forums, listening to podcasts. There's a number of these different activities and channels, some of which you cannot easily track through your analytics, but these are the many different touch point sources that they're going to for information. So very important that you recognize this. So what this means is that in terms of marketing and sales have to not just be aligned, they need to be working together. But in my view, and actually latest research from McKinsey supports this, it is no longer, the whole show up and throw up of sales making the pitch no longer works. What needs to happen is your marketing needs to be true strategic marketing. So it needs to be data driven, it needs to be buyer driven. And by that, I mean, your marketing really needs to enable decision makers to make the buying decisions. So again, we need to understand who they are. So what are their roles and titles? What are their priorities, and how do they buy? So where do they go for advice, insights, recommendations when they're trying to make decisions regarding problems, challenges, objectives? We need to understand, are they looking at case studies, testimonials, white papers? Are there certain communities that they're being members of? Are they going to certain events? Are they listening to certain podcasts? We need to understand what those sources are, because that defines what your marketing activities need to be. Are you providing workshops, case studies, templates, blogs, etc. So your marketing is all about providing the buyers with those tools that facilitate and helping them in the decision-making process.
Mm-hmm.
Sales still has a role, but generally now, and it's been quantified and studied, buyers don't want to talk to salespeople until much later in the sales process.
Yes.
When they do come to talk to you now, salespeople can no longer simply be doing selling with the show up and throw up with making the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be operating as strategists, as customer strategists, where you're going in and you're able to connect the dots for your business decision maker and being able to tell them, based on all the activities and all the factors in the external environment, what are the factors that are going to be applicable to them, helping them to define what their solution, what their roadmap, their path to success needs to be, and how they're going to be getting there. And that might mean referring them to different experts, putting together solutions from different providers. So it's really working in a strategic and in a partnership manner. That is how salespeople need to be working. So marketing should be setting up and providing the buyers to do that independent self-research. Mm-hmm. And then sales needs to be able to carry the conversation, but in a very strategic, action-oriented partnership type way. And I also want to emphasize, Fatimah, this requires a high level of in-depth expertise and knowledge. Yes. It's not enough to have, I've talked to many senior leaders, many CEOs, other senior folks. You cannot have, and a lot of salespeople like to talk about, well, we've got the playbooks, ebooks. Those have to have a very in-depth level of in-depth business and industry expertise to be able to answer those problems and solutions. The superficial stuff, business buyers are getting that through their own research. So you have to be able to have those sales conversations in a very deep, meaningful, strategic, analytical way. These need to be talking about strategy. It can sometimes maybe about almost like workshopping, action planning. Mm-hmm. So it's very in-depth. You need to be functioning as like a strategist, as a consultant with that depth of industry, business expertise, solution expertise. And so that's what's required. So that is really how the new marketing and sales need to come together. Mm-hmm. Customer service and support also play a strong role now as well, mm-hmm. because customer service and support, and in the IT environments, they call it customer success, those people who are involved in that frontline capacity often are the ones that are identifying opportunities to, in terms of additional customer needs, customer requirements. So in terms of solutions and improvement, they're often ones that are identifying what those what's needed. They need to be feeding that back into the organization and giving inputs to products and operations as to what we need to be doing so that we can retain those current clients and customers, mm-hmm. and hopefully grow them as well by meeting those additional needs and requirements as well. So really it's marketing, sales, service, and support are the three that have to work in collaboration. Alignment is no longer enough, yes. But it has to be in line with buyer needs in terms of who they are, how they buy, and what are their priorities and requirements.
This sort of, that comprehensive answer really supports something that we tend to use in our business, and we refer to it, it's called the AIDA model. It's a change management model. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's got 4 steps. It's got awareness, interest, decision, and action. So awareness obviously is really heavily where the marketing comes in. A lot of companies I find, speak to, tend to worry about marketing when they've got something to release, as opposed to the always on marketing that needs to be going at all times to create awareness of your brand, your product, your services. It's not selling, it's just that awareness. And then interest is obviously where kind of links in, I guess, to what you were talking about around, are you releasing an ebook? Are you releasing a thought leadership paper? Are you releasing a workshop? Whatever it is that's going to generate interest for you and your customers and your products. And then I think sales maybe comes in at the decision and action part, where they're just getting to the point where the customer's already done, like you said, they've listened, they've done their research, they've got awareness of your product and services. It's now about sales, converting that sale. So we tend to sort of use that model in our business. And I find it really interesting that it seems so simple, but there's a lot that goes on behind it. But there's no way we could do sales without marketing. And I think having them together, working in tandem, is absolutely the thing that's helped us as a small business as well.
Absolutely. And they have to work together because buyers are operating in a very non-linear manner. Like I said, they're using multitude of sources from their peers, groups, forums, reviews, case studies, white papers, trials, demonstrations, going to workshops, going to webinars. They're listening to podcasts. They're doing a multitude of different activities. They're coming up with a very in-depth level of expertise. And marketing's role is to facilitate that. And marketing is about providing those tools, resources, content, that depth of expertise. Advertising is a small component. Advertising is about awareness, but it's all about creating demand by providing those tools, insights, etc. And then sales, as you've said, is to kind of is to facilitate and take it to the next level. But there is a level of depth and expertise that is now required and expected now from B2B buyers, which I believe why there is a bit of a problem while sales are struggling is because marketing and sales both need to step up, and they need to step up significantly in terms of the depth and expertise that senior leaders are expecting. And that's where it's falling off. There have been a number of studies that have been done, and in terms of CEOs' view of the value they get from sales discussions, and there's quite a disconnect between sales perception of the value they bring going in. I think it was something like an 8 out of 10 score, whereas CEOs, senior leaders say in terms of what the value they're getting out of the discussion, it's only 3 out of 10. Because we really now, again, we have to raise the bar. McKinsey has done a study that they've just released, an article that has quantified this, and expertise above all else is the number one requirement that senior leaders are requiring in a B2B environment. And it's that depth of expertise that we really need to step up. Doing the 5 basic bullet points of how to do go-to-market, for example, is no longer enough. You've got to get into the detail and the nuances of some of the key challenges around go-to-market strategy. That's what the senior leaders want to know and want some insights, what I call advice, insights, and recommendations to. And I think there's been a lot of content that's been very, very superficial, because during lockdown, we're told put out content. And so a lot of it was very superficial, and it's just not meeting the needs, particularly when you're getting into more complex solutions, like your technical solutions and your various kinds of professional services. They want answers to some of those deeper questions and insights into those deeper questions. So that's where marketing and sales both need to step up in that depth of expertise and showing the way forward.
It's really a good point you bring around the current environment and where we're in at the moment. One of the things we've done, I mean, we've read your book, so thank you, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we really had to deep dive into listening to what the customers wanted at this point. Now, I'll admit I've been in business 10 years and obviously learned a lot along the way. Probably wasn't doing it very well 10 years ago, but has significantly improved, with the help of experts along the journey. So we kind of started listening to what the market was saying, and we then completely pivoted the products and services we were providing. This comes to the innovation side. So we're doing some really new, exciting things to really support where we are now, which is growth. So, a lot of what you talk about in the book, we've been applying, which has been great. Now, I just want to sort of go back to, we talk about awareness and interest and that marketing piece. We know small businesses don't have a lot of money. In our team, we spend a significant amount of time. We produce about 200 pieces of content, and that's, resharing posts on all social media platforms. So smaller items. And then we have what we call the big rock content, which is where we're trying to create interest, whether it's a white paper or whatnot. With limited budget in small business, what would be maybe 2 or 3 recommendations you would make that if I was to ask, where should I spend my money? What would you recommend for small businesses?
Okay. In terms of small business, in terms of where to spend your money, I would say you need to be spending your money on, you need to be making sure you're spending time on creating content, like the right kind of content that, again, is going to address your target decision makers' priorities and interests. But where you need to be spending you should be spending a significant amount of investment is around your content distribution and repurposing, getting it out there. So spending the time to be making sure that your content, you're getting it out there through your email, across all your social media channels. Can you turn that into a video? Is there an opportunity to either maybe you might create your own podcast, spending time to be guesting on other podcasts. Are there opportunities? Can we turn this around and use that research, that white paper as a basis to have some kind of mini conference or a webinar, forum, workshop? Or you may want to create a bit of an industry event where you're bringing peers together, because bringing folks together from your industry, your peers, suppliers, etc., that is quite impactful in terms of building community, and etc. So you really want to be spending a lot of your time around content distribution. So content creation is one component, but it's really around distributing it and getting it out there through partners. You might want to even potentially use through sponsor content. So there's certain industry publications and they will allow you to spend, let's say, $1,500, and you can have your white paper go through their database, which is 100,000 of your target audience plus their social media. That is where you really want to be spending a lot of your effort, is through content distribution.
Amazing. It's very good. I think the repurposing, they talk a lot about, rather than constantly creating new content and thinking of new ideas, the amount of content we create, like you said, not everyone's going to see it the first time. So redistributing it, and there's a lot of tools out there that people can use to repurpose content, like repurpose.io is one of the ones that we've used, which repurposes content for us as well. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of tools to help with that. I'm just thinking about sort of earlier on what you're talking about around the customers and understanding and listening. Why do you think that mapping customer personas and customer journeys is really important, even for a small and medium business who maybe don't have the capacity to do it, but need to do it?
Okay, it's very important in terms of, it's very important for small businesses to understand their customers, but they need to understand their buyers. Now, with the buyer's journey, a couple of things. One, that terminology, I'm going to advise, small, medium businesses, don't get hung up on this buyer journey, because that tends to, I find, either overwhelm or people don't understand. Let's keep this simple. You need to understand, as a small business owner, who is the buyer, who is the decision maker, those that make the decision and or influence the decision in buying your solution, your product or service, whether it be IT, catering, accounting services, graphic design. What are the roles and titles of those people? It is those people that you want to get an understanding, again, of what are their priorities and key challenges, their expectations, how they buy. So where you can have some conversations, and these can be short, 15, 20-minute conversations with those people, recording those conversations so you can understand what are their key priorities, where are they at today, where are they trying to move to, what are their key priorities, what are their challenges and frustrations, document that, and understanding what are the sources of what they use as part of their decision making in terms of where they go for advice, insights, recommendations, what their buying criteria. So have some discussions with your current clients, some of your prospects, so who you don't have but want to have, and even just having, half a dozen of those interviews, and then, taking those learnings, which you have documented, recorded, workshop to say the so what does this mean in terms of where you prioritize? That is a very low cost but highly effective way of how you can be doing some of your listening to understand at a buyer level what are their priorities and requirements. Because it's not enough to understand in terms of customer. So let's say in terms of the organization. So if you're an IT firm and you want to get into Qantas or Bank of America, it's not enough to understand the organization in terms of its overall goals, challenges, and priorities. We need to know the decision makers for our particular product. So if you're a cybersecurity company, who is the person in charge of making decisions around cybersecurity solutions? We need to understand their priorities, their challenges, what's their buying criteria, and where do they go. That's where we need to be focusing on. So that listening through those interviews, those kinds of discussions are very good. You also want to understand from an industry level as well in terms of what's going on in your industry. So your industry and your professional associations, Fatimah, are another good source of insight. I tell all of my small, medium businesses I come encounter, you should be a member of at least one of, if not more, of your core industry and professional associations that are relevant to the target industries that you're looking to operate in. Because those industry and professional associations, they're either free or very low cost membership, but they will have a wealth of information because they're doing the research, the white papers, they have the webinars, the events, and they can give you all that you need to know about what's going on in your industry. Printing off the agendas of their key events and what's happening can also give you clues as who are some of the industry leaders, the influencers, who might be potential clients and or partners, solution providers. So your industry and professional associations are also another great source to give you that listening in terms of the market, in terms of your competitors, what's going on in industry dynamics. So those are two very effective, practical, but low-cost ways that small, medium businesses can be keeping on the pulse of what's going on at an industry market level, as well as a customer buyer level, because it's that buyer insight that is quite critical. And you need to be checking in and having regular engagements, discussions with your buyers periodically, so that you're maintaining on the pulse of what's important to them. So you're continually providing in terms of your marketing, your service offerings, your service and support, that all those things you're providing is not just customer driven, but is meeting the needs of the buyers, those target decision makers that you're serving.
It sounds really important, sort of going back to what you said around listen. So I find that going to these sort of industry events and being part of these professional associations and talking to the customers, even when we don't secure a piece of work, we lose the work for whatever reason, we'd like to find out why, because that will then inform what we're doing. Is it we missed something on the sales and marketing side? Is it we overquoted, we underquoted? Did we not meet the customer at their problem, and what their problem was? Did we not address that? Are we not driving enough value? There's a range of things to consider, I think, when thinking basically about listening. I find there's so much value that I get from attending those events and being part of those associations, because it's often where you hear what the real root cause of problems are that they're facing through the speakers or through the networking at the tables, etc. So I think it's a absolutely great idea, and I think everyone agrees should be part of their relevant professional associations for sure. Sounds amazing. So Michael, I want to talk about your book a little bit more. I know we briefly touched on it, but first of all, how long did it take to create the book? Where did the idea come from? And tell us a little bit about sort of what the book's about.
Okay, I'm going to do a bit of a plug here. So the book is Listen, Innovate, Grow, which is also the name of my consulting firm, Listen, Innovate, Grow. And I've decided to rebrand the company as Listen, Innovate, Grow, because those are the three activities all businesses need to do. But this book is written by an SME, two SMEs, myself, my co-author Gareth, for SMEs. So these are the three underlying activities that small, medium businesses need to do to build and grow and succeed in B2B. Mm-hmm. And really very quickly, listening is all about listening on three levels. Listening to you, so you as the business owner or business leader, to understand your goals, your priorities, understanding your company, its strengths, its weaknesses. Where are you having success? What are some of those key competitive advantages? Listening to the market, so understanding what's going on in the industries and geographic markets that you currently serve or those that you seek to serve. Understanding your competitors as well. And then listening to customers, understanding your customers at an organizational level, but the key to success in B2B is being buyer-driven. Mm-hmm. To again, understand who are the decision makers and those influencing the decision, what are their priorities and challenges, and how they buy. Those are the three fundamental strategic questions you need to answer. And by doing that listening on the three levels, it gives you clarity as to where to focus. Where, as a small business, do we need to be focusing on? If you're an IT company, where do we need to be focusing on? Is it training, workshops? Is it coming up with a new solution? What are some of the core needs that we need to focus on? Innovation is about how you win. And Fatimah, I talk about business innovation. And by business innovation, could be incremental or it can be incremental or more significant changes, modifications, and improvements across one or more of the 5 categories. It can be in terms of your products, mm-hmm. in terms of your services. There could be organizational innovation, where we're looking at things like outsourcing, joint ventures, partnerships. Organizational innovation is something every small business should be looking to do, because you can partner. If you're an IT company and you have an accounting firm and you're both going after mid-market engineering companies, you two can collaborate and maybe do joint newsletters. You might do a joint webinar. You might swap content and That's forms of partnership. So these don't have to be big, elaborate things, but even things on a very small level can have massive impacts on your business. So that's organizational innovation. Then you've got your process and systems innovation, the process innovation. So looking at your system and processes, where can you make incremental and or potentially more significant improvement, again, to meet the needs of those customers, those buyers that you serve. And then finally, there's marketing innovation. And so by marketing innovation, I'm talking about what are some strategic B2B strategic marketing initiatives and strategies you should be undertaking as part of your business. Two marketing strategies I believe every small business should be considering is micro-influencer marketing. So finding out who are the go-tos in your industry. And I'm not talking about the Kim Kardashians, I'm not talking to Tom Brady's of US football, I'm not talking big famous people, I'm talking within your world. So if you're in the cyber security space, who is the one that's doing the podcast? Who are the ones that are speaking at the events? Who are the ones that are, talking on LinkedIn about that particular topic? You want to find out who are those go-tos, and you want to see how you can collaborate with those people to get them to do a review of your product. You might want to be a guest on their podcast, or if not, be on yours. And even if you don't have one, do a live stream. StreamYard is like $30 a month. Do a live stream interview, invite them on. Subject matter experts love to be able to have dialogue and be able to talk, where they have the opportunity to take that content, share it with their network, share it with your network. You might, create a piece of content like an article. So influencers, so finding the go-tos within your industry, within your niche. These are people that 99% of the world would not know, but in your world of biotech, IT, transportation systems, equipment, that they are the go-tos that are written about, doing the blogs, the podcasts, and look to collaborate with them. The other one is advocacy marketing. Advocacy marketing is how do you leverage the champions, your raving fans, to help grow your business. So you get them to speak at your breakfast, at your conferences. They do the case studies, the testimonials. They can serve as references. So Fatimah, with your business, you may have some clients who will serve as reference clients. So when you have prospects, these reference clients can talk to this prospect to say, what is it like to work with your consulting firm, Agile? So those are two very low cost, but very highly effective strategies that can give you opportunities to build reach and credibility, access to new markets, and it can be a total game changer. And this is not just theory, Fatimah, this is real live stuff. The person that did the reference from my book, Rivers Corbett, who is a leading entrepreneur in the Canadian space. So he's an influencer in small business entrepreneurship. He did the reference from my book. He's the one that got me into the Startup Canada conference. I had quite a difficult time trying to get into having that 10-minute discussion with the CEO of Startup Canada to get into the conference at the time I was launching the book. Contacted Rivers. Rivers sent an email and said, look, Michael's going to be coming from Sydney all the way to Ottawa for the conference. He's willing to do so. We need to get it in, make it happen. So these things have massive impact, because from that conference, I've met some people who I'm now collaborating and doing work with on an ongoing basis. So these aren't just theories. These are things that are low cost, high impact, and can work, and momentum breeds momentum. So that's all about innovating. I think I went a bit long about that. That's okay. Then there's grow, and grow are the different ways that you can grow. So you may have first of all, your growth pathways. Are you going to go after new customers, new markets, new products and services, for example, or combinations thereof? Then in terms of growing, we need to be thinking about change management. So as you go from the 4-person operation to 10 people to 20 people, you're expanding into new markets, are the necessary changes that you're going to need to be making within your organization. As part of the whole growing your financial management, because as you're growing and you're going into new markets, developing new offerings, financial management is quite critical, because we all know we can burn through cash and go through to the nth degree if we're not careful. So listen, innovate, grow. Listening, getting that depth of understanding in terms of where to focus, business innovation around what are the different changes that we need to be making, new introductions and or improvements, might be small, might be big. Generally, you have to do a couple of them, will help fuel your growth, and then grow. How do you obtain that growth, and how do you manage that growth, and how do you evolve, and the things you need to do as you're growing. So those are the 3 things that you need to do as a Listen, Innovate, Grow framework. As to why I wrote this book, I felt there's a real need. I'm a strong believer B2B presents massive opportunities for those of us in small, medium businesses. That old saying, no one gets fired for hiring IBM, those days are over. A lot of your senior leaders are very open to and willing to working with us small providers because we have the expertise, we have the hunger, and we often will deliver that service experience, that customer client experience second to none. So they're quite keen to work with us, but you need to know how to navigate and succeed in the world of B2B. That's what I'm so passionate about. And Gareth and I felt the need. There's a need for both for SMEs, for small, medium businesses on how they succeed in B2B, because a lot of the books in B2B are written for big corporates. You know, they talk corporate language, customer insights, and they talk about segmentation studies and all the, analytics and all of the big end of town systems, processes, and things that small business owners don't have the budgets for, don't understand. So we want to make this very strategic, very practical, and this is a framework about a foundation of how you do business. It should be underlying the premise of because you continually need to be listening to your company, your markets, your customers and buyers. You need to be making changes and improvements, and then you need to be having your strategies to grow and maintain the growth. So it's to give you the framework, the foundation as an ongoing way of doing business to succeed in B2B in very strategic but practical, action-oriented ways.
I love it. I've read the book, and actually at the last component in Grow. And what I liked about it, that actually really did surprise me. I was expecting to pick up the book and read a lot about the sales and marketing stuff that you've talked so well about and that we've spoken about previously. But what I found really surprising is there's actually a lot in there that was actually about business in general. So for someone starting out or maybe running a small business today, that they are on a growth journey, there's stuff in there that really helps them plug gaps that maybe they wouldn't have been aware of, or maybe mistakes that I know I made 10 years ago. So I love that sort of practicality of it. I think people are really sick and tired of just hearing theory. So having something that it really does give you that sort of journey of how you need to move forward based on, like we talked about, big business experience, which is something that not everybody does get to have, I think adds a lot of value. And I also really emphasize for me on the process side. So as a small business owner who's come from big corporate as well, you and I understand the complexities and the necessity around good structure and process, which most big businesses tend to have okay, they could improve. But in small business, a lot of small businesses just start and run and they don't have time to think about that. So we need to think about process, the right process by functions, and work our way in the position of the sort of, I guess, the importance of making sure we've got the structure of a big business, but then the entrepreneurial spirit of a small business, and do that from the start, just little bit by little bit. We did function by function, month by month, just to improve marketing and then sales and then human resources and so forth. So we need to think like a big business, but obviously have the heart of an entrepreneurial one.
And that's exactly right, because that's the key to success if you want to build and grow your business. Because there are so many small, medium businesses right now that do want to grow. And I'm continually getting the question, Michael, want to grow, but how do I get started? Where are the opportunities? And they don't understand these fundamentals. And these are the 3 key activities you need to be doing. And we do have to make time to work on the business, and on the business starts with listening. And so in terms of when folks are thinking about getting, where do I get started? It's like, well, when's the last time you've talked to your customers, your buyers, your decision makers? First of all, do you know who your decision makers are as of right now? Who are the relevant decision makers for those clients that you're currently serving and those ones you seek to serve? And what are their priorities? What are their challenges and their goals? Where are they at right now? If you don't know the answers to those questions, and I would say in the last 3 to 6 months max, then your first step is to go out and talk to some of your current customers. Have these conversations. They don't have to be very long, but document and record them. And you want to know where they're at today, where are they looking to go, what are their key priorities, what are their key challenges, what sort of things that they need to move forward. Just asking those questions, listening to those, recording those responses, and doing that across ideally some of the clients that you currently have and some of your prospects, documenting those, and then going back into your teams and having, workshopping that will give you a clear pathway of what are your key priorities and what you need to be doing in terms of your next steps. So that's what I would be recommending. And given where we're at this time of year, at this recording, all small businesses need to be thinking now about 2023. What are you going to be doing? What are the plans for them? And again, B2B presents massive opportunities, but you are going to have to think and operate like a big business. So you have to be strategic. You have to understand your buyers. You have to understand your industry and have that in-depth expertise. Superficial and coming up with content, 5 ways to market your IT firm isn't going to cut it. They know the 5 ways. They want to know what happens when they've tried ideas 2 and 5. Why are they going wrong? What are they going to do? In depth now, we have to have that in-depth level of strategic thinking, a much deeper level of service and support as well. We have to be small and be acting entrepreneurial, but at the same time, we have to be having our, big person's boots on and acting like our big brothers and sisters in terms of being strategic and really operating at that bigger level.
100%. We'll set the foundations for growth, and it's something that you don't get a second chance to do it when you're starting a business. You do it at the beginning, you do it right. Absolutely. And that'll set the foundation, like building a house, as they say. So, Michael, we're almost at the end of our time. How can people get involved with Listen, Innovate and Grow and what you do? Where can people get more information? We will link to the book on our website, of course, but how can people get involved with you?
And so the best place to go is to go to my website, listeninnovategrow.com. And there you'll see lots of content around B2B on how to listen, innovate, and grow. You'll also see a lot of updates around upcoming events. As moving forward, I'm going to be having regular monthly Ask Michael Anything questions, and also going to be launching a new community for SMEs and B2B called the Legacy Community. So listeninnovategrow.com is where you get all the information. And also please do connect with me on LinkedIn. Those are the 2 places.
Amazing. I will definitely link to that for our listeners. Final question for you today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, a call to action, a piece of advice, or a question to ponder?
I guess call to action is really start thinking about 2023, but in terms of an action, make a list of your top 5 customers and prospects and look to have conversations with them. Take that first step in terms of your 2023 planning, because this is being recorded now at September. You need to be thinking and planning now. So yeah, pick who are those 5 clients and customers. If you don't have any, who are the 5 that you want to have, and look to have those discussions. Doesn't need to be very long, but you will get some nuggets of gold that will set you in the right direction on how you move forward.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time. I'm sure everyone's gotten a lot of value. I have as well. I took advantage of this by asking some questions I wanted to know as well. But thank you. It's been a pleasure. And look forward to continue working with each other.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?